Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you as well. Senator, we've got a lot to talk about, including Democrats having no moral compass. In fact, their moral compass is only polling data. And now they've turned on Graham Platner because they're afraid he's going to lose, just like they did with Eric Swalwell in California, even though the warning signs were always there.
Well, you're exactly right. Graham Platner is imploding. This was the least surprising thing to have ever happened in the history of the planet Earth. It was predictable, and indeed not just predictable, it was predicted on this podcast a month ago. We predicted what is happening was exactly what would happen. Graham Platner will drop out of the Democrat race. As you and I are recording it Tuesday night, he has not yet dropped out, but he will drop out before July 13th. July 13th is the deadline for the Democrats to replace him on the ballot. We predicted that, as I said, a month ago on this pod. He is dropping out because there are now credible allegations that he sexually assaulted a woman, and this woman apparently can be believed because she's a left-wing Democrat. But that's not actually why he will drop out. He will drop out because the Democrats have decided they must get him off the ballot because, as you noted, he is losing. We're going to break down the Graham Platner mess, the steaming pile of manure that is his campaign and the mess of a life that this guy has led. But we're also going to break down how this Graham Platner fiasco demonstrates the utter hypocrisy of Democrats, that there is not a Democrat in the United States Congress, with the lone exception of John Fetterman, there is not another Democrat who has demonstrated even the tiniest shred of integrity when it comes to Graham Platner. We're going to come and we're bringing the receipts. You're right. It's just like Eric Swalwell, and before that, it's just like Joe Biden. All today's Democrats care about is winning, and anything else they're willing to overlook. But don't just believe what Ben and I are saying. We're going to come with the receipts right now.
Before we get to that, I want to tell you real quick about an important thing that's happening in this country. And there are so many brands today that offer and they claim to stand for American values. But most of the time, it's all talk and no action. And that's what makes Patriot Mobile so different. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile has been living their values and standing in the gap for every American who believes freedom is actually worth fighting for. Their business was founded on a simple conviction. If culture is being shaped through commerce, then Americans deserve a real conservative Christian alternative. Well, today, Patriot Mobile has become America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They offer you and your family or your business premium priority nationwide service on any of the three major U.S. networks. They also have unlimited data plans, international roaming, and 100% USA-based customer support. And with Patriot Mobile, you can even have two separate networks on one phone, giving you unmatched coverage. And the peace of mind you can't get with other carriers. That is probably my favorite part about my phone, is I literally have two networks on all the time, and it switches to whichever one has the best coverage. Now, besides the great tech, what truly sets Patriot Mobile apart is their mission. Every year, Patriot Mobile contributes millions of dollars to organizations defending free speech, religious liberty, and the sanctity of life, as well as our Second Amendment and America's real future. So join the movement today. Go to patriotmobile.com/verdict. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict or call 972-PATRIOT. If you use the promo code VERDICT, you'll get a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict. or 972-PATRIOT to make that switch and make a difference with every call you make today. So, Senator, you and I talked about this, predicted a month ago on this show. It seems that you and I are really good at understanding politics and how scumbags of the Democratic Party are always on an expiration date. This one, as you mentioned, is the 13th. They've got to get him off the ballot, meaning he's got to drop out by then, or they're stuck with him on the ballot. I want to know your prediction. Do you think the same people that created Graham Platner that are now trying to destroy him are going to be able to get him off the ballot by the 13th? Or do you think he says, you know what, I'll drop out the 14th just to stick it to all you guys that are coming after me?
No, he's a Marxist. He'll drop out. He'll drop out this week. It'll be by the 13th. They'll replace him. And understand, look, for Democrats in Congress, the fact that the guy had a Nazi tattoo on his chest That was not disqualifying. They were happy to support him. And not just any Nazi tattoo, a Totenkopf, the symbol of the SS at the death squads in World War II. That's what he had tattooed on his chest. Democrats just fine with that. The fact that he self-described himself as a communist, they had no problem with that at all. The fact that he described that he would have masturbation fantasies in porta potties, which is just weird. I mean, it's just that's a very odd dynamic. That didn't scare any of them away. The fact that he had a prior girlfriend accuse him of being emotionally, verbally abusive, that didn't scare him away. The fact that he used repeated racist insults, attacked African Americans, Democrats were just fine with that. The fact that he was a vicious misogynist, no problem with that at all. The fact that he attacked a decorated combat veteran, and he said he wished that the veteran had died. Well, the Democrats were just hunky-dory with that.
And don't forget the anti-Semitism as well. Let's throw that in there.
Well, you know that kind of runs with anyone that puts a Nazi tattoo on their chest, like the Venn diagram, to use a Kamala Harris term, of Nazis and anti-Semites. That would be a 100% overlap in that all Nazis are anti-Semites.
Yeah.
And by the way, the fact that he described that he had a fantasy of raping men who broke into his house, although he said, quote, not in a gay way. Just raping men in the heterosexual way. None of that was problematic. And I want to go through the receipts. All right, Chuck Schumer. On June 2nd, I endorse Graham Platner. This is after almost all of this stuff had broken. How about Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders, quote, I personally think he is an excellent candidate. I'm going to support him, and I look forward to him becoming the next senator in the state of Maine. Ruben Gallego goes and campaigns alongside him. Tim Walz, I'll be in Portland tomorrow with Graham Platner to kick off his campaign to retire Susan Collins. Let's go win this thing. That was in April. Elizabeth Warren, all right, this is one of my favorite. Elizabeth Warren, boy, she was all in. Understand, progressive, powerful advocate for equality. What nonsense. Okay, so here's what Elizabeth Warren says. Quote, he's a combat veteran, an oyster farmer, and has inspired people with his populist agenda for a government on the side of working families, not the billionaires and giant corporations. She also said, quote, I endorse Graham Platner because I know he's a fighter on behalf of working families and because he doesn't take any corporate PAC money. And we need more people in Washington who are less about go along to get along and more about fighting to make the kind of changes that families need. And I want you to listen to what Elizabeth Warren said about Platner on April 18th. Here, give a listen.
I am here because Washington needs fighters, and Graham Platner is the fighter we need. You bet. I said to myself, that's my kind of man. Because that is a man who not only has the values, but a man who believes in accountability. And we need a little accountability coming out of Washington right now. We need Graham Platner to come in and get rid of the corruption in Washington. Time for new laws.
Get rid of that corruption center in Washington. I mean, it's just that simple, right? You just say a man's a good man, forget all the red flags, and you just make sure that no one ever knows it even happened.
That's my kind of man. I want you, in fact, I want to just play that again. Listen again to Elizabeth Warren on Graham Platner.
That's my kind of man.
I believe her, by the way. I believe her as much as I believe any Democrat right now. They love this guy until they just decided, oh, wait, he may not be able to win.
And by the way, every one of those has now called on Platner to drop out. So Chuck Schumer tonight, he and Kirsten Gillibrand put out a statement. Quote, the allegations reported today are incredibly disturbing. Violence, abuse, and sexual assault are absolutely unacceptable. The DSCC will not invest in Maine Senate if Platner remains on the ballot. Bernie Sanders. I have spoken with Graham Platner about the best path forward for Maine. In light of these very serious allegations, I have recommended that he step aside. How about Ruben Gallego? Quote, The allegations against Graham Platner are troubling and deeply serious. I am rescinding my endorsement. How about Tim Walz? Quote, the allegations of sexual assault against Graham Platner are deeply disturbing. He should drop out and make way for a candidate that can defeat Susan Collins in November. How about Elizabeth Warren? Quote, now more than ever, we need leaders in Washington to reflect our values. There can be no tolerance for sexual assault. Working families are counting on Democrats to win the Senate election in Maine, to unrig our economy and hold Donald Trump accountable. With so much at stake, the best path forward is for Graham Platner to step aside as the Democratic nominee and address these serious allegations outside the Senate race. Now, among other hypocrites, and I won't necessarily go through all their quotes, Ro Khanna, happy to stand with Graham Platner with all these allegations. Chris Van Hollen, well, when he was asked about the Nazi stuff, the misogynist stuff, the racist stuff, Chris Van Hollen said, quote, people should have second chances. Sheldon Whitehouse, what did Sheldon Whitehouse say? Here's a quote from Politico. Whitehouse has been among Platner's most constant supporters among lawmakers in the U.S. Senate, calling the controversial candidate, quote, wonderfully appealing. Sheldon Whitehouse, Nazi, communist, misogynist, racist oyster farmer, wonderfully appealing. What else did he say? Whitehouse said, quote, he's off to a really strong start and has a wonderfully appealing local background and story. Just last month, Whitehouse dismissed a New York Times report quoting women who accused Platner of, quote, intimidating and disturbing behavior. Whitehouse said, quote, seems like a lot of nothing. I mean, the only one who had anything to say that seemed unsettling was a woman who works for right-wing political operations. Apparently, in Democrat world, you can sexually harass, you can assault Republican women, and they don't count as women, so apparently that's just fine.
By the way, what happened to the Democrats' mantra, believe all women? I'm just wondering, when did that get thrown out when it comes to Swalwell and Platner?
It was always a lie. It was always a lie. These are the same people that defended Bill Clinton over and over and over again, that launched, remember, Hillary Clinton launched the smear campaigns on every woman that came forward with allegations against Bill Clinton. It was never true. Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani's several of his top aides, including his strategist Morris Katz, his press secretary Joe Covello, played leading roles in Platner's campaign. Hassan Piker. All right, here's what Piker said on June 10th, not very long ago. Quote, do I want Graham Platner to win this race? Abso-effin-lutely, although he did not abbreviate effin. I do for a million different reasons. He's great on message. What kind of lunatic thinks this guy is great on message? Now, where are we today? Everyone I've gone through has said, okay, time to get out, time to get out, time to get out. Except, let me tell you, one knucklehead. Who do you think is right now the lone knucklehead who said he doesn't want Graham Platner to drop out?
I would have guessed if I didn't know better. I would have said Bernie Sanders, but he's even said it now. We got a serious reservation, yada, yada, yada. So give me, outside of that, I have no idea. Give me the name.
Stephen King.
Really?
Maine. He lives in Maine. Left-wing radical, filled with hate. Here's what he put out Tuesday night. Quote, Graham Platner may drop out. I hope he doesn't, but meanwhile, the abuser-in-chief just keeps on keeping on. So Stephen King is the one guy that says, give me a Nazi, communist, racist, misogynist, alleged rapist, and I'm good with him. Why? Because Susan Collins in Stephen King's world is way too conservative for him.
All right, I think it's time. You and I haven't had a verdict bet in a long time, and we both like Mexican food, so I think we should bet Mexican food. I'm going to throw it out there. I think Graham Platner is going to be so mad that this has happened to him that he's not going to drop out before the deadline.
All right, you are so buying me enchiladas and margaritas. I actually feel bad. This is like taking money from a baby.
Too easy?
No, this is so easy.
If I'm him, though, and all these people got you to do this, and all of them got you in, and then they all helped you raise money, and they all said all these things, and then right before the end, they're like, we're going to trash you like Swalwell. I just think maybe I'm wrong. I think a guy is crazy enough to have a Nazi tattoo is crazy enough to say, watch this. On the 14th, the 15th, I'll drop out, but not before then.
Look, you don't understand communists.
All right,
they take orders.
Give me. All right, tell me the other side of the bet.
They take orders. One of the other of us will buy the other Mexican, and so when you buy me Mexican, I'm gonna. By the way, I'm not gonna order just an ordinary margarita. I'm gonna say, give me the toppest shelf.
I knew you were gonna say top shelf. Top shelf, yeah, all the way. I believe you. And the large queso. Keep going. I'm ready.
And not just like the ground beef enchiladas. I want shredded beef. I want. What do we mean queso? I want real melted cheese. I want good stuff on that. But look,
I cannot wait for this bet. Anyway, keep going. So tell me why you think there's no way he'll do this.
Let's go back to Swalwell, and we covered this when Swalwell, when the scandal broke. Look, Swalwell was one of the leading candidates to be governor in California, and all the Democrats were happily behind them. And from all the reports that came out of his being a repeated sexual assaulter, abuser, harasser, and I mean, it really was pretty shameless conduct that just went on and on and on. You know, it was so commonplace that the Democrats
everybody
all knew
about it. It was talked about in D.C.
Okay, not everybody knew about it. I didn't know about it, but I don't know Swalwell. Like, I don't run in the circle of House Democrats, so I had no clue that the guy was a predator. But the people palling around with him obviously did. The Democrat staffers obviously did. You don't behave like Swalwell did without that becoming common knowledge in the circle, because he was not hiding it. He was not at all circumspect. He was open and brazen. Why? Because he understood that the leftists today, they will defend anything.
Anything. Yeah, anything.
If it keeps them in power. What was Swalwell's cardinal offense? It was when he was splitting the vote and suddenly it looked like the Republicans had a chance of becoming governor. And, I mean, the Democrats ruthlessly took him out with no hesitation at all. Let's go back to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
To be clear, every Democrat in Congress knew that Joe Biden was well into dementia, that he was not remotely competent to be president of the United States, his first term, much less a second term. They knew that he could not be trusted to have his finger on the button. They knew that none of our enemies feared him because they knew that he was a man deep into senility. And you know what? They all circled the wagon, and in fact, you know, they kind of sounded like you remember the old movie, The Manchurian Candidate?
Yeah.
Well, in The Manchurian Candidate, all these folks who had been brainwashed all said the same thing about the candidate that was put forward. They all said, Raymond Shaw is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life. They all repeated that word for word.
Yeah.
That's almost exactly what every Democrat said about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is quick. He's on the ball. Oh, my goodness, it's the most incredible encyclopedic memory he's doing. He's doing like 9-digit multiplication in his head. I mean, it's like, you know, fire shoots out of his fingertips. I mean, there wasn't even a tiny bit of hesitation.
Yeah.
A tiny bit of, gosh, this is bad for our country. They didn't care.
Yeah.
And when did they pull the plug on Biden? After the debate, when they're like, oh, no, we can't hide this anymore. Look, they would have been glad to Weekend at Bernie's Joe Biden, literally have him die in office, put him there and just raise the hand like Weekend at Bernie's when they had the dead man they pretended was alive. The Democrats were fine with that. They did not care if the president of the United States was any longer competent. They did not care if Eric Swalwell was a sexual predator, and they didn't care if Graham Platner was a sexual predator. What changed was suddenly they thought there's a real risk of losing. And listen to what Zohran Mamdani said today about Platner.
Hey, how's it going, Sally?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
I wanted to ask, given that you have a sort of ascendant role in the Democratic Party, could you talk about the Maine Senate race? Do you think that Graham Platner should drop out of the race? And do you have any intention of endorsing any candidates in competitive races outside of New York, El Said, or anyone else?
No, I believe that it's time for him to drop out of the race. And when it comes to my own endorsements, I've made 8 endorsements at the state and federal level. They've all been right here in New York City. I'm incredibly excited at the fact that they won their races, and that's where my focus is for now.
I mean, there it is, in his own words, right? Like, that's it. That's it. You know, just go along with what everybody else says at the very end when you got to get rid of somebody.
There you go. Commie's going to commie. And look, Mondami's saying, look at all the communists I'm electing in New York. There'll be time enough to get communists everywhere else. But to be clear, he didn't care that Platner was a racist, misogynist, Nazi communist. That didn't matter. All that mattered is, he's going to lose. So here's what the AP is reporting tonight. Succession fight is already underway as calls mount for Platner to drop out of Maine Senate race. Democratic nominee Graham Platner hasn't resigned from the Maine U.S. Senate race following an allegation of sexual assault, but the succession battle to take his place was already underway Tuesday. The allegation reported Monday prompted a chorus of calls for Platner to depart the high-stakes race against Republican Senator Susan Collins, which could decide party control of the Senate. Platner's longtime backer, Senator Bernie Sanders, quote, recommended that he step aside. Then, Tuesday evening, the Washington Post reported that an ex-girlfriend of Platner had accused him of removing condoms during sex without her consent. Platner, who has denied all the allegations, has been mum on whether he'll step aside. And the Maine Democratic Party, charged with creating a process to pick his replacement, hasn't publicly announced their plans. On Tuesday night, Executive Director Devin Murphy Anderson released a video saying the party is developing an, quote, open, inclusive, transparent, and fair process, but won't disclose details until Platner withdraws. Platner's team has repeatedly tried to, quote, put their thumb on the scale, she said. Quote, we have repeatedly reiterated to Graham Platner's team that they will have no role in determining our next Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate, nor in determining what this process looks like. An official for the Platner campaign responded that it, quote, has reached out to the party to try and understand what this process would look like, and, quote, at no point has the campaign tried to put its finger on the scale. The official added that the thousands of Maine residents who voted for and volunteered for Platner, and they should play a role in the decision. So understand, once you're no longer useful to the communists, you will be discarded.
Yeah. Quickly, by the way.
Quickly, with no hesitation. And let me, look, folks listening to this, you could be forgiven for being somewhat cynical, for saying, oh, come on. Both parties do this. And listen, it is true. There are candidates for both parties that are less than ideal, that have real problems, real faults. That's true because, you know, candidates are human beings, and human beings are flawed and fallen creatures. But I will say I'd like to draw a contrast between this race and Roy Moore in Alabama. So Roy Moore was the Republican nominee for the Senate in Alabama. Now, I did not support Roy Moore in the primary. Once he was the nominee, I endorsed him. I offered my support because I wanted to win the seat. I wanted the Alabama Senate seat to be held by a Republican. After he was the nominee, there were serious, credible allegations of sexual improprieties of Roy Moore with young teenage girls. They were multiple, they were serious, they were credible. And I actually called Roy Moore and I said, look, I want to hear your response to this. I want you to lay out and convince me this is not true. And I will say that conversation was one of the least satisfying conversations I've ever had with a candidate. He did not have any response that I found remotely credible. And so what did I do in that race? I explicitly rescinded my endorsement because I said, look, I'm not going to support someone who is sexually assaulting teenage girls. That is not. And you know what happened? Republicans lost that seat. They elected Doug Jones, a Democrat, to the Senate. And by the way, a bunch of Republicans, after I did that, followed by withdrawing their support. On the Democrat side, you had John Fetterman, who was alone in showing real courage. And I want you to listen to what John Fetterman said this week about Graham Platner and about the real fault and culpability for what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I refuse to overlook that. But honestly, I would really call Bernie Sanders to apologize for pushing this kind of predator more than anyone he helped him elect, and now apologize to the victims, especially the woman that she claimed that he raped her. So I don't know why you want to keep pushing these kinds of people. Maybe he should consider set a few out and stop pushing these kind of communists and people. And now people, you know, like like P. Hustle now, he has been credibly accused of rape. And that's fairly recent, too. That was only less than 5 years ago.
Well, he said that allegations are untrue, but that he's basically reviewing his options. He's obviously going to drop out, correct?
There it is. I love that. He's obviously going to drop out, correct? I think he'll drop out. I think the date, I hope that I'm right here for so many different reasons, but I just think it'd be amazing to watch the guy go, okay, you guys want to burn me down, fine. You're all going down with me.
Ben, I'm looking forward to some damn fine Mexican. And I will say this. Look, the chances that Bernie Sanders apologizes, as John Fetterman called on him to do, I think are 0.0%. Bernie's not going to apologize. Chuck Schumer's not going to apologize.
I agree
Tim
with
Walz
you
is
there.
not going to apologize. Elizabeth Warren is definitely not going to apologize. They are perfectly fine. Sheldon Whitehouse is not going to apologize. None of them care. It is all about power. It is all about their ability to be in power, and it doesn't matter. They are. Look, you want to know what the Democrats' message from this cycle is? Elizabeth Warren put it best.
That's my kind of man.
It's pretty accurate, isn't it? It's just, that's like my favorite quote from her besides being Pocahontas.
Well, and I will say it is a sad expose of the Democrat Party because they're going to take him out. Platner will be gone, which he should have been gone a long, long time ago. He should have been off the ballot. Someone like this should not be in the United States Senate. But they're doing this. The only reason that they turned on him is because his poll numbers dropped and they believed, this guy's going to lose. Let's dump him overboard and find someone else. And by the way, the someone else, if they find another Nazi, communist, oyster farmer, racist, misogynist, sexual predator, if his poll numbers are decent, they'll stick with him. If his poll numbers drop, they'll dump him as well.
Final question on this. What type of candidate do you think the Democrats will go with when they replace him? Will they go with another radical? Because there was momentum, they feel like, for him before all of this. Or will they find kind of a vanilla Democrat, statewide office holder, maybe someone in the past that's easy to deal with, that there's not any of these types of discoveries that will come out? What do you think the Democrats will do?
So I don't know. I'll confess I don't know the main Democrat Party, so I don't know the decision makers there. The most obvious choice would be Janet Mills, the Democrat governor, who ran against Platner and lost. Although Mills has said publicly that she's not running for Senate, although that's the kind of statement, I am not currently running for Senate, is not the same thing as I would turn down the nomination. If I were to guess, I would cynically say that's who they pick because they think she would have the best chance of winning. But who knows? They might grab some crazy radical off a commune up in the Maine woods. And the Democrats don't care. It doesn't have to be anyone with any qualifications. It doesn't have to be anyone. Look, if you're willing to go with a Nazi communist oyster farmer, you're willing to go with anyone. Their only test is going to be who do we think can win? And if they can get can win plus crazy, for them, I think that's a plus.
Yeah, there it is. Don't forget, we do the show Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'll also want to stick with these shows to see who's right on the date, the dropout prediction, who's paying for dinner. So make sure you download Verdict with Ted Cruz Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Hit that subscribe or auto download button. You can also watch this episode on YouTube. So if you want to watch on YouTube, you can subscribe there as well. And the Senator and I will see you back here in a few days. And in between, grab my show, the Ben Ferguson Podcast as well. I'll keep you updated on breaking news, and we'll see you back here in a couple of days.